Of all the things you do not want to find on your property, squatters is probably near the top of that list. In this video, we're going to be discussing squatters' rights and adverse possession here in the state of South Carolina, as well as what the eviction process looks like. And make sure you stick around until the end because I've got some tips and tricks to help you prevent squatters on your property. Hey there and welcome back. My name's Bill and I am your favorite YouTubing Charleston realtor. Today we're talking all about squatters and the legality and processes here in the state of South Carolina. Now, spoiler alert, squatting is legal in South Carolina.
Procedure, everyone. What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
However, it's not an easy process, and we're going to get into that. And again, make sure you stick around for the tips and tricks to prevent squatters on your property. Webster defines a squatter as one who settles on a property without right or title or payment of rent. I also want to say that there is a difference between squatters and trespassers. Now, on the surface, they're both the same in that they do enter a property unlawfully. However, the difference is that a trespasser has no intent on occupying that property long term, where a squatter does. So what I don't want you to think is that you can just go out of town for a week or two or a month and a squatter can come in and claim a property as their own. Now, it is not that simple and cut and dry here in South Carolina. So let's get into how a squatter can claim adverse possession of your property. And the first way is that they need to have occupied the property continuously for 10 years. They also have to have made improvements to the property, and there is no requirement for them to have paid property taxes. 10 years is a really long time. In addition to these South Carolina requirements, there's also 5 federal possession requirements that must be met. And they are hostile possession, which is the person claiming adverse possession must be occupying the property and making claim without permission of the owner. Then there's actual possession, which is the person must have actual possession of the property. There's open and notorious possession, and that means they must be living openly at the property in order to make a successful adverse possession claim. Trying to hide their presence at that property can be a disqualifier for adverse possession. Now, there's exclusive possession of the property. So in an adverse possession claim, it's only valid for a single individual, not a group of squatters. So a cult, if you have a cult, you can't claim adverse possession. You have to be a singular person or family claiming this. And finally, we have the continuous possession, which is a squatter's possession must have been continuous for the state's entire statutory period, which, as we discussed, is that 10 years here in South Carolina. And that 10 years must be unbroken periods of absence from the property. And it's not saying they can't go to the store and come back, but they can't leave for a year and then come back and claim it again. So with all that, as you can imagine, it can be difficult for a squatter to produce all of this physical documentation that all of the above requirements have been met. So South Carolina is one of the states that honors color of title. So this is just meaning that a squatter who cannot produce a valid title to the property may still prevail in an adverse possession case if the owner did not protest their presence during the statutory period. Squatters can only make adverse possession claims to a property that was not in use when they occupied it. Now, of course, all of this is up to the interpretation of the courts and who can provide the most details and proof and facts. But we'll get into that in just a minute. I want to talk about what if you have a rental and the tenant stays? So these are called holdover tenants, and are they considered squatters? Well, tenants who do not vacate after the cancellation or termination of their lease and are not paying rent are considered trespassers. If their lease ends and they continue to make rental payments that are accepted by the landlord, they acquire the legal status of tenants at will. Now, I also read when it comes to holdover tenants that as soon as that lease is ended or terminated, that is when that 10-year period begins. So if you're a landlord and you let someone live there for 10 years without collecting any payment, I mean, they're squatters and they could probably take possession of your property, and really, like, at that point, that's on you. I don't really see that ever happening though. But I could be wrong. Like, if you know of some time that has happened, like, let me know down in the comments. Like, I'd love to hear these stories. Okay, so we've established that it's so much more than just moving in and claiming the property over the course of a weekend in order to be a squatter. But let's say all of these conditions are met and there's a squatter at the property. What is the process to get them evicted? Well, this can be a pretty lengthy process. And I want to just note first that self-eviction in the state of South Carolina is illegal. So if you go and you try and forcibly remove them, threaten them, turn off the utilities, change the locks on the doors, you could be setting yourself up for a lawsuit. So please do not do that. And if you want the actual steps, please consult your local authorities. This is just what I know, but they could have a different process and different forms that you need to fill out. So with that being said, here's the gist of how you evict a squatter in the state of South Carolina. First thing you need to do is deliver them with an eviction notice. Now, that could be your 5-day, 7-day, 14-day eviction notice, whether it's they need to pay their rent or a notice to quit. That is the first step. So if they fail to leave after the eviction notice, you're going to file an eviction lawsuit with the court, after which you're going to attend the hearing. Now, if the squatter still refuses to leave, you can request a rule or order to show cause, which will trigger a hearing in front of a judge where yourself and the squatters will both present their cases, and you as the owner would need to present all the facts that you are the rightful owner of this property. And then finally, after hopefully winning this case, you can file for a writ of ejectment. Now, this gives the squatter 24 hours to vacate the premises. Now, if they do not leave, at that point, a sheriff can go in and forcibly remove them from the property. Now, again, the sheriff will forcibly remove them because self-eviction in South Carolina is illegal. If you ask me, that whole legal process to get squatters out sounds like a giant headache. So, if you want to know how to prevent squatters, here's some tips and tricks that you need to know. The first one is, I think, common sense, and that is visit said property more often than every 10 years. Now, this does a couple things. If you're there and you see something or someone living on your property, you can get them off the property before they reach that 10 years and can file for adverse possession. In addition, when you're there, even if no one's there, I would suggest pulling out your phone and taking a couple pictures of you walking around the property, which are going to be time-stamped, which will show that you are actively using and visiting that property as the owner. And then going along with this, if there's any neighboring properties or neighbors that can see the property, meet them and become friendly with them, because they are going to be your eyes and ears. Most of the time when people squat, it's with properties where owners live out of state or far away, and they're not there often or at all. Now, if you know the people that live across the street, down the street, if they see something happening and it's not you, you can instruct them to reach out to you so that you can come down and inspect the property and make sure that nothing illegal is going on. And a few more things you can do: make sure you're paying your property taxes on time, which is showing that you are the legal owner. Another thing I read said to put up no trespassing signs around the property. I don't know how much this holds up in court. I read mixed reviews on it, but it's always a good thing to do, to just have those there to warn people that, hey, I own this property and you don't. And the last thing is, if you do get to the property and let's say there is someone there and they happen to be friendly squatters, you could always offer to have them rent the property, even at a discounted rate, if they agree to beautify the property and keep it up and help with the landscaping. Now, I think that could be a win-win for everyone. If you're not even using the property, that means you can get a few extra bucks for them living there, and they can do all the work to make the property nicer. So when it does come down the road, if you want to sell it, it might actually be easier to sell it. and then they would be living there lawfully and everyone would win. Let me know down in the comments if you have any crazy squatter stories, whether it's in South Carolina or any other state. We would love to hear those, and I hope it all turned out well. Now, if you do have a property that you're not using and it's just sitting there and you're worried about squatters, and you want to talk about what it would look like to sell that property, I'm a local realtor. Give me a call. I can get you the fair market value and see if that is a viable option for you. And if you do think you have squatters or you do have squatters, remember, I am not a lawyer, a judge, or in law enforcement. So this is just my knowledge. Please contact your local authorities on exactly how to handle that situation. I hope you like this video and I hope you don't get squatters. Check out this video right here because I think you're really gonna like it, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.